Autumn in Brighton, New Jersey, brought a crisp bite to the air, carrying the scent of damp leaves and early frost. The sprawling campus of Brighton Heights High School stretched across the hillside, a mixture of brick buildings, metal bleachers, and winding walkways flanked by trees shedding their golden foliage. Students swirled in currents of chatter and laughter, their sneakers squeaking on tile floors and pavement alike. Through the sea of familiar faces walked Celine Carter, a girl with chestnut hair tucked neatly under a hooded jacket and a backpack slung firmly over both shoulders. Today marked her first day at Brighton Heights, her sixth school in 4 years. She wasn't naive. She had learned how to move through crowded halls without drawing attention, how to remain invisible while gathering information. Her eyes scanned the bustling crowd, noting the clusters. Cheerleaders in tight-knit groups, jocks striding with effortless swagger, students leaning against lockers in whispered conspiracies. And then she saw him, tall, broad-shouldered, and radiating a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Dominic leaned casually against a locker bank, a group of boys in Letterman jackets hanging around him. His brown eyes glinted with mischief and dominance, and the smirk curling across his lips told everyone in the hallway exactly who was in charge. Celine's pulse quickened, though her face betrayed nothing. She had faced bullies like Dominic before, cocky, untouchable kids who thrived on intimidation. She knew exactly how to handle them. Don't react, observe, wait for the right moment. Then, as if fate had decided to test her patience immediately, someone bumped into her, knocking her books from her hands. The notebooks and folders sprawled across the floor. Heads turned. A few students giggled. Well, what do we have here? Celine didn't need to look up to know whose voice it was. Dominic's smirk widened as he stepped closer, his arms crossed. I don't think I've seen you before, he said, his voice calm but dripping with arrogance. Celine bent to pick up her books, ignoring the heat rising in her cheeks. When she finally stood, she brushed past him without a word. Hey, you gonna answer me? Dominic's voice carried, forcing some of the nearby students to glance in their direction. Celine kept walking. The hallway seemed to shrink around them. Dominic wasn't used to being ignored. A tug at her backpack halted her just enough to signal that he wasn't done. She turned slowly. The hallway fell silent, even students who weren't paying attention now watching. You shouldn't have done that, she said, calm and measured. Dominic chuckled, a slow, mocking sound. And why's that? Celine met his gaze, unwavering. For the first time, she saw a flicker of something in his eyes. Curiosity. You're different, he said. Celine smiled faintly and continued walking. That alone seemed to unsettle him. By the end of the day, Celine had navigated classrooms, lunchrooms, and crowded hallways without incident. But she knew Dominic's pride wouldn't let him leave it alone. The afternoon sun hung low over Brighton Heights, casting long shadows across the pavement. Students spilled out of classrooms, backpacks bouncing, laughing, talking about homework, weekend plans, or the latest gossip. Celine kept her head down, her pace steady, her mind alert, but she knew someone was following her. New girl. She froze, her instincts sharp. Dominic Voss stepped from behind a brick wall, hands in his pockets, a grin plastered on his face. His usual entourage had dissipated, leaving him alone, a predator stepping closer to assess his prey. What do you want? Celine asked, her voice calm, even. You've got an attitude problem, Dominic said, circling her slowly, like a lion inspecting a caged animal. Don't think you can just walk past me. I don't have a problem, Celine replied evenly. I just don't waste my energy on people like you. Dominic's eyes narrowed, intrigued and slightly frustrated. Oh really? And why's that? Celine leaned in just slightly, careful to keep her voice low, almost a whisper. "Because you have no idea who I am." He laughed, a rich, confident sound, masking the flicker of uncertainty he felt at her calm defiance. "Oh yeah? Who are you?" Celine's lips curved into a small, knowing smile. She reached into her pocket, pressing a single button on her phone. The roar of a powerful engine split the afternoon air. Heads turned as a matte black Dodge Charger Hellcat rolled smoothly down the street, tinted windows reflecting the golden sunlight. The car slowed to a stop beside them. The window rolled down to reveal Bradley Stone, the Hollywood actor whose presence alone could silence a crowd. His gaze, sharp and commanding, rested on Dominic. Dominic's smirk faltered. He swallowed hard, his bravado cracking in the face of unexpected power. "Get in," Bradley said to Celine, voice calm but authoritative. Without hesitation, she stepped past Dominic and slid into the passenger seat. The car rumbled to life, leaving Dominic frozen in the middle of the sidewalk, his friends nowhere in sight. The sound of the engine reverberated through the street, the crowd of students behind them whispering, pointing, taking out phones. As the Charger accelerated down the quiet streets, Celine exhaled slowly, feeling the tension in her shoulders finally release. Bradley kept his eyes on the road, one hand tapping rhythmically against the wheel. "You okay?" he asked, glancing at her briefly. Celine nodded. "I'm fine." That was dramatic, wasn't it? Bradley chuckled softly, a warm, amused sound. "That's one way to put it. But you handled yourself. That Dominic guy, he's used to control. You just shifted the balance." Celine's gaze drifted to the window, watching the trees blur past, sunlight streaking across her face. "I wasn't trying to impress him. I just didn't want to play his game." Bradley's lips curled into a smirk. "Sometimes the quiet ones are the most dangerous." Celine allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. For the first time that day, she felt a sense of control. Not through strength, not through loudness, but through strategy, patience, and calm composure. She knew this was only the beginning. Dominic wouldn't forget this encounter, and neither would anyone else who had witnessed it. The next morning, Brighton Heights High hummed with rumors. Students whispered in clusters as Celine entered the building. The story of the muscle car and Bradley Stone's appearance had spread, creating a ripple of awe and curiosity. Dominic Voss was waiting near his usual locker spot, flanked by his friends. His gaze locked on Celine as she walked by, unflinching, unaffected by the spectacle. Whispers followed her steps. Some students watched with amusement, others with suspicion. Slowly, the tide was beginning to turn. During lunch, Dominic attempted to assert his dominance. He called her out loudly from the center of the cafeteria. "Still crying about yesterday's little drama?" Celine didn't even pause. She walked past him to her usual table at the back, her tray balanced carefully. Her calm demeanor drew the attention of nearby students. Dominic's friends shifted uneasily. They were unsure whether to laugh, join in, or retreat. Celine tilted her head slightly, voice soft but deliberate. "Funny. You seem to forget that fear isn't the only way to control people." The cafeteria went still. Dominic's jaw clenched. For the first time, his words carried no weight. Students glanced at him differently now. Doubt creeping in, curiosity replacing blind admiration. Celine smiled faintly to herself. She didn't need to escalate. She simply let his arrogance and impatience do the work for her. The next few days at Brighton Heights High unfolded like a carefully scripted chess match. Celine moved through the hallways with a composed precision, her steps deliberate, her gaze steady. She had become a ripple in the currents of Dominic's world, a quiet disturbance, almost imperceptible but undeniably present. Dominic, however, was not accustomed to being unsettled. He prowled the halls like a storm cloud, scanning every corner, every group, looking for any sign of weakness, any misstep that he could exploit. But Celine offered him nothing. During first period, a math problem was handed out. Dominic leaned back in his chair, elbowing his friend, making jokes under his breath, trying to provoke a reaction. Celine didn't respond. She solved her problem efficiently, her pen gliding over the paper. A few glances from nearby students betrayed their curiosity. How could she remain so unshakable in the face of Dominic's bravado? By lunch, the tension had reached a subtle peak. Dominic's usual table, once the center of attention, now seemed smaller, less secure. His friends exchanged uneasy looks. Some whispered behind their hands, "She's different," while others simply shook their heads, unsure how to intervene. As Celine carried her tray to her usual corner table, a small commotion erupted near the center. Ryan, a linebacker with more muscle than sense, attempted a classic intimidation tactic, sticking out his foot as she walked past. Celine stumbled slightly, catching herself, her tray clattering lightly. The cafeteria hushed. Ryan grinned, leaning forward. "Careful, princess. Didn't see that coming, huh?" Celine's lips twitched into a faint, sarcastic smile. "Wow, cavemen still exist." A ripple of laughter, not mocking her but at the absurdity of the comment, swept through nearby tables. Ryan's smirk faltered. Dominic's eyes flickered with tension as he watched, his confidence cracking imperceptibly. Celine sat down, calm, and began eating as if nothing had happened. It was the perfect maneuver. Dominic wanted chaos, wanted reaction. Celine denied him that, letting his own arrogance unravel in public view. Celine had learned long ago that people like Dominic thrived on visibility. The more they were seen asserting power, the stronger they felt. The trick was simple. Let them act, and the consequences of their actions would slowly, inevitably, catch up to them. From her corner, she observed the students. Some whispered, "He's losing it." Others were more subtle, nudging friends, pointing at Dominic's tense posture. Every movement he made, every word he forced out, only further exposed him. Celine sipped her drink, the faint taste of iced tea grounding her. Patience had become her ally. Let Dominic dig his own grave. She only needed to remain unshaken. The final bell rang, and the hallways became rivers of students spilling toward buses and cars. Celine walked at a leisurely pace, knowing Dominic would be waiting. Sure enough, he was leaning against his car, arms crossed, expression unreadable. No friends, no entourage, this was personal. "Let me guess," Celine said casually. "Another brilliant speech about how I don't belong here?" Dominic exhaled sharply, nostrils flaring. "No," he said, voice low. "I just want to know, why don't you fight back?" Celine tilted her head, studying him. "Because I don't need to." Dominic scoffed, stepping closer. "That's not how it works. People like me, we push. People like you either push back or get run over." Celine leaned in slightly, her voice calm but piercing. "Or maybe people like me let you keep pushing, keep making mistakes, and when you finally realize the mess you've made, it's too late to save yourself." Dominic's jaw tightened. For a fleeting moment, doubt flickered in his eyes. He covered it with a forced smirk, but Celine saw the war raging within him. "You think you've got me figured out?" he asked, voice trembling slightly despite his attempt at bravado. "Maybe not," Celine replied softly. "But I know you're scared. Not of me, of being irrelevant, of losing, of waking up one day and realizing no one cares about you unless you're making someone else feel small. Dominic's fists clenched at his sides. For the first time, he realized that control was an illusion. Celine didn't need to fight him. He was already unraveling. 2 days later, Brighton Heights High buzzed with anticipation before Celine even stepped onto campus. The whispers had become a murmur, the murmur a current, carrying news faster than any announcement ever could. Something was about to happen. Celine could feel it. As she approached her locker, a crowd had gathered, phones raised, murmurs filling the air. Her eyes scanned the scene. Dominic's locker was plastered with a mosaic of screenshots, printed messages, and sticky notes. Every cruel remark he had ever made, insults about students, teachers, and even his so-called friends, was displayed for the entire school to see. Timestamps confirmed the worst. These weren't ancient jokes or old grudges. They were recent evidence of a man desperate to maintain power through intimidation. Dominic shoved his way through the crowd, his face pale, eyes wide, hands trembling as he ripped the papers from the locker. But it was too late. The damage was done. Celine leaned against the opposite locker, arms crossed. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone carried authority, a quiet satisfaction that Dominic could no longer ignore. Students gawked, some snapping photos, others whispering in disbelief. Dominic's friends, once loyal, now stepped back, unsure whether to defend him or retreat into the background. Every movement he made, every strained laugh he forced, only deepened the humiliation. Dominic locked eyes with Celine. No es mirk, no arrogance, just pure rage, barely contained. You did this? He hissed, voice low and trembling. Celine tilted her head slightly. Did what? She asked innocently. You think you're so smart? You think this makes you better than me? His fists clenched at his sides. Celine took a slow step forward, calm, collected. No, Dominique. I think this shows you exactly who you are. The only difference is now everyone else sees it too. For the first time, Dominic was powerless in front of his peers. He turned sharply, storming down the hallway, shoving through the crowd, leaving behind whispers and shaking heads. Celine watched him go, unshaken, knowing the lesson had been delivered. For the remainder of the day, students kept their distance from Dominic. Whispers turned into gossip. Rumors of his behavior, once hidden behind charm and bravado, now dominated conversations. The social hierarchy of Oak Ridge High, once unshakable, had shifted. Celine's reputation began to rise, quietly but firmly. Students who had doubted her now respected her. She had not fought with fists, nor loud words, but with patience, strategy, and the power of observation. Celine walked to the parking lot where Bradley Stone waited beside the matte black Dodge Charger Hellcat. Sliding into the passenger seat, she let out a deep exhale. You didn't even have to throw a punch, Bradley said, voice calm but impressed. I didn't need to, Celine replied, a small smile playing on her lips. Bradley started the engine, the Charger vibrating under them as they pulled away. The late afternoon sun painted the sky in streaks of orange and gold. Celine let her gaze drift over the city streets, feeling a rare sense of calm. Now what? She asked. Now? Bradley smirked. Now you enjoy the quiet. You've shifted the balance. You've won without ever raising your hand. Celine smiled faintly, resting her head against the seat. She knew Dominic would recover eventually, that some challenges never fully ended. But this victory was hers, achieved not by aggression, but by patience and intelligence. The following weeks saw Brighton Heights High returning to its usual rhythm, yet the memory of Dominic's downfall lingered. Students spoke quietly of the girl who had outsmarted the king. Dominic became more cautious, quieter, and far more calculated in his actions. The arrogance that had once defined him now masked a simmering awareness that control could be challenged. Celine observed the school from the back rows of classes and the corner tables in the cafeteria. Her presence had shifted the social landscape subtly but irrevocably. She had taught not by force but by example, by showing that confidence, intelligence, and patience could dismantle power without a single act of violence. Even teachers noticed a change. Where once the halls were dominated by fear, a cautious respect now permeated the corridors. Students whispered about boundaries, accountability, and the quiet girl who didn't need to prove anything. One evening, Celine sat at home, swirling the ice in her glass, thinking about the past month. Bradley Stone leaned against the counter, arms crossed, watching her with a quiet pride. "Feels good, doesn't it?" he asked. Celine smiled faintly. "Yeah, but it's more than just winning. It's knowing that control isn't about being loud or feared. It's about understanding the game." Bradley nodded, smirking. "And you've got the patience to play it better than anyone." Celine leaned back, the tension that had weighed on her shoulders for weeks finally lifting. She understood now that power built on fear is fragile. Those who rely on intimidation will always falter when faced with someone who sees clearly and waits patiently for the right moment. By winter, Brighton Heights High had settled into a new rhythm. The whispers about Dominic's downfall became stories told in hushed tones, a cautionary tale about arrogance and the consequences of underestimating the quiet ones. Celine walked through the halls with an ease she had never known. Students watched, whispered, some with admiration, others with curiosity. She had earned a subtle, quiet respect, not through aggression, not through bullying, but through strategy and composure. Dominic's gaze, when it met hers, was cautious now. There was no smirk, no arrogance, only a recognition of defeat and the knowledge that Celine had outplayed him. Celine knew life at Brighton Heights would continue with its social battles and petty dramas. But she had learned a crucial truth. The strongest victories aren't always won with force. Sometimes the quiet ones are the most powerful of all. Bradley Stone's car waited for her after school, the engine growling as it idled. Sliding into the passenger seat once again, she let herself enjoy the moment, knowing that she had emerged not just victorious, but unshakable. As the Charger roared down the streets, golden sunlight fading into evening, Celine smiled. The game was over, and she had played it perfectly.